You're watching Next Pitch, the student-athlete playbook for parents raising tomorrow's athletes.
Anthony Leverett's here, host of the Next Pitch podcast, and for our Weekly Sports D&A with Dusty Hara. Thanks for joining me, Dusty. I just tried to, hopefully Jason edits out what I started that thing with, because that was brutal, man. That was, looked like Bo Nix in the first three quarters of I just pulled a Bo Nix in the fourth quarter of our intro. Thanks for joining me, man. Yeah, no, I see that the beard is already coming in. No Shave November is already off to a big start for you. Yeah, I kind of tend to look like Santa Claus these days by the time November's over. It used to be red and a little black, but now it's just 100% gray. Just all gray. It's distinguished is what it is. I think that's how you got to frame it now. Yeah, it's all those coaching days. My beard started going gray before my hair did. It's pretty crazy. For a good cause, though. A bunch of us in the dads in the Lake Oswego area do this, and maybe as we get into November, there's something we can touch on why people do this, but for now, let's move on to maybe the greatest World Series of all time. I don't know if that's a big statement, but boy, was it fun to watch. And you and I have talked about baseball over the last couple of weeks here, and I went through a phase when I was a kid. I was a huge baseball fan. I loved it. Watched it with my grandpa. I loved watching I was a Braves fan, and watching Maddox and Glavine, Smoltz, and those guys pitch. I could watch it every game they played. And as I've gotten older, I just haven't watched it as much. I was fascinated by this postseason and could not take my eyes off of it. It was a drama everywhere you turn. I mean, when you have an 18-inning game in game 2 to kind of kick things off in the World Series, this was supposed to be the Dodgers Invitational, where the Dodgers are just going to run roughshod through everybody in Major League Baseball, and who's going to be able to slow them down once they got to the World Series. And then the fight that the Blue Jays were able to put up in the opportunities that they had, there was drama throughout. Now, when you look back at it, if you're a Toronto fan, it's crippling defeats when you think of, Freddie Freeman with a walk-off home run in 18 innings. Then you have in game 6, the ball gets wedged under the fence, which is the smart call, the right call, the call that you need to make in a World Series, but how heads up that is for them just throw the hands up and save it as a double. How often do you think that's like, I've never seen it happen. And I know I don't watch a lot of baseball now, but I've watched a lot of baseball in my life. I've never seen that happen. It's rare when it does happen, but there's a reason why it's a rule. Yeah. And because when that ball gets lodged in there, those seconds they're priceless when you're trying to make a play. And we saw in game 7, what a play at the plate what it means when the catcher pulls his toe for just a fraction of a second, then gets it back on the plate, and how many times Toronto was this close, yet they don't find a way to get it done. And sometimes, it's the baseball gods that are looking over the Dodgers, and that was what happened in game 7 of the World Series. What's really cool though is I think on both sides you had the big stars make plays. The pitchers pitched, they made pitches, they got outs when they needed to. Big players on both sides. You can't watch Guerrero play and not be a fan of his, right? Like he just plays with a joy, and the whole story of Bichette and him together on the Blue Jays side, that's a pretty cool story of how they came up together and all the way through this process. But the Dodgers just have maybe just a little bit better players to make that big play in that moment. Well, $1 billion on your roster really helps that out, does. And that's the thing though, is that in baseball, there was an era where they were afraid to market their stars, and the steroid era really did that to them. Yeah. Where every time that they would say, hey, this is going to be the new thing, boom, something happens, he gets popped, and you're back to square one. Well, baseball has tweaked so many things, from, banning the shift to making the bases bigger to having a pitch clock, things that have made it more enticing for fans to watch and create more action over the course of a game. And when you have those things happen, and then the sport say, you know what, forget it, we're going to lean into the stars that are going to be the people that
are going to attract the fans. When that happens and then those stars show up on the biggest stage, that is a perfect storm for baseball. And they've done so many things wrong, but Major League Baseball has gotten it right as of late with making the game easier to watch, faster games, and then the stars showing up and playing the way they are. And then having, generational talents like Shohei Ohtani, who's pitching, hitting. Those things are incredible. And then you have international stars like Vlad Guerrero Jr., who, is Dominican and Canadian and also loved by Americans because of his dad and the way that he played in Montreal and LA. I mean, it's really cool to see baseball having its moment and people responding to it too, because the World Series was going head to head with a lot of big football games and they were winning those battles and people were watching in droves because it was riveting. It was riveting drama that everybody wanted to see.
Well, and I think it's gotten more athletic. I know for a period of time, I would turn it on and I would turn it off because watching it, and 10, 15 years ago, after that steroid era, right? That it just didn't look athletic. It looked like guys kind of out of shape playing baseball. And now what you're seeing is these dudes are athletes and they are making big time athletic plays on a baseball field, which is super fun to watch those guys in that environment playing at that level.
Yeah. I mean, when you have as many guys throwing 100 miles an hour or more as you do now in baseball, it's crazy to think of how athletic and how quick twitch you got to be to put a bat on a ball. And they come at you in waves where, it's not just one or two guys that can do it in the league. It's two or three guys on every pitching staff that can touch upper 90s, 100 miles an hour, and finding ways to hit that is absolutely insane. Analytics got to a point where, to your point, where you were watching baseball and you're like, wasn't appealing because you would have the shift because a hitter can only do this against this type of pitcher with these types of pitches. And we are going to make sure we handcuff him and good luck hitting 100-mile-an-hour ball to wherever you want on a baseball field. That was always funny to me when the criticism was, well, just hit the other way. Yeah, I would also say hit the other way, but Jamie Moyer isn't out there throwing up 86 miles an hour where these guys can take it opposite field.
Yeah.
You have a tenth of a second to react to a pitch, and then you're supposed to say, yeah, hit it the other way. Yeah, good luck with that. See how that works out for you.
Yeah, you talked about stars, and I was reading an article this morning about Yamamoto, and let's see, wait, $170. He's I don't know how tall he is, 6 foot maybe. I don't. Do you know how tall Yamamoto is?
I don't know.
He weighs 170 pounds, and it talks about
5'10", 176.
176. Okay, and it talks about the article's talking about how his body was built, how his trainer built him, and for any of you out there that kind of into sports science, if you go read, it's a pretty well done article. I think it was on ESPN this morning, but talked about how he gets ready for a game and the idea that never would anyone have thought that, even maybe 5 years ago, that a guy would pitch 6 innings the night before and maybe come back and throw to one hitter, but to come back and throw almost 3 innings again is just a pretty remarkable thing that he was able to pull off. And not just out there in the biggest moments making those pitches.
I think that's something that any sports fan loves too. I mean, we still talk about Kirk Gibson's home run in 1988 because he wasn't supposed to be out there. Those are moments where you're not expecting to see that guy do what he just did. And you can go to, Bo Bichette in the home run that he had. He's been battling injury through the postseason. George Springer with an oblique, and he's finding ways to come up and still be at the plate. He looked like he was
going to die every time he took a swing.
Yeah.
Like the look on his face after was like, that's how I look when I get out of my easy chair, much less out there.
But people love that. You want to see that. And then Yamamoto throwing 96 pitches the day before and then saying, yeah, I want to go. And then the fact there was a setup to that in the 18-inning marathon where, they go to Ken Rosenthal in the dugout, and he's like, Yamamoto has told Dave Roberts he will pitch if they need him to. And so we had a taste of, hey, he's willing to do it. And then to have him come out in game 7 and actually do it again and get out on the mound, and they throw him and he's like, yeah, no, I'm about that life. That is the gritty performance. People love that about any athlete in any sport. We revere that. Willis Reed in the New York Knicks.
I was gonna bring up Willis Reed.
You've got all of these
Michael Jordan in the flu game, right? Like
there's
tons of them.
And anytime a guy puts his own well-being to the side, especially in the era where we have a facet of fans that'll say all these guys care about is money, to have them put all of that aside and to see how many guys actually did that for this World Series, that's what made the drama even more action-packed. And look, they delivered on it, and that's great for baseball. The one thing that I hate about baseball, because I love watching baseball, I will turn on a game in the middle of the summer when nobody should care. The thing I hate about baseball is that this is just careening down the path, and they were setting it up as, if the Dodgers do it again, we're going to have a lockout on the next CBA, which I think is in a year. And baseball is going to get in its own way again. I hope baseball does not get in its own way again, because as bad as a dynasty can look to the hardcore baseball fans, to everybody else, casual fans love dynasties.
Yes.
In any sport.
Yep.
They love greatness. They love history. And is it bad that the Dodgers are spending $1 billion and it's their title to lose every year? If you're a hardcore baseball fan, but for the game and people getting attracted to it, it's actually good. It's good for the game.
I agree. People want to see a bunch of stars playing together, right? And in big markets as well. I think what you just saw with the ratings gives you the answer to whether or not it's good for baseball to have all of its stars kind of in these concentrated markets. And the owners have an opportunity to do the same thing the Dodgers are doing, right? Like you just got to go, you got to decide whether winning's more important or making the utmost you can every year is the most important. And the Dodgers clearly have made winning the priority.
Well, and we shouldn't penalize the team for wanting to win and playing within the rules. Now, they say they want a salary cap to distribute the talent a little evenly. Baseball needs a salary floor more than they need a salary cap.
100%.
They need to force teams to spend a baseline of money before you sit there and you say, all right, no, we put in a cap.
Or we sell a team, or you have to, if you're not going to be willing to put a team out on the field that's going to be able to compete, then you shouldn't be an owner of one of those teams. Like, it's time to bring in people that are going to spend the money.
Now there's so many teams that have done what they call the shortcut through hell, which is you tank, you lose. And like the Astros lost 100 games 3 years in a row. And I know everybody's going to go to, well, they cheated and they bang on trash cans. But the reality of it is that they had 3 100 loss seasons back to back years, so they could replenish their farm system, build up talent, brought them up through the minors together. And you can look, they wanted single A, double A, triple A, and then they brought them all up into the bigs and said, now's your chance. And then they went and they spent a bunch of money. They got guys like Justin Verlander. They went out and they got Garrett Cole, because those are the pieces that are going to help the Astros get over the top. The Cubs did this with Theo Epstein when they finally ended the curse and won a World Series. The Red Sox did it as well. There are teams that will go through phases with a direction and a purpose of, we're not going to pay a lot of guys because we know what we're trying to do, and that's to win. Well, they've kind of gotten rid of that because now Major League Baseball has a draft lottery where you can't tank anymore in baseball. So there's no reason for these teams not to spend on their current rosters, yet we're still seeing it. We're still seeing the Pirates and the Reds continue to say, no, we're not going to pay guys money. That's where you need a salary floor before you start talking about a salary cap, because we're also seeing guys that should be stars like Paul Skeens that will never get a chance because their ownership is awful and they don't have a direction and they don't have a purpose for their losing, except for, hey, every 5th day when Paul Skeens is on the mound, we know we're going to sell tickets then, and that's good enough for them.
Yeah. I think it's a fascinating, the business of sport is a fascinating conversation. And I think we should maybe one day, maybe just have a full day where we kind of dissect the business of sport. That would be a fascinating conversation. There's a whole bunch of dynamics, agents, how the marketing dollars work, all that stuff we can dive into. All right, man, let's World Series over, baseball over for couple months, they'll be back at it.
Yeah, dude, pitchers and catchers report in like 55 days. Goodness gracious,
they'll
they
be
never
back
stop.
at it soon. Well, what's not over and just getting started here is college football playoff first ranking comes out here in I believe it's tomorrow, right? Like
yeah,
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, the 4th.
Yeah, so I think obviously this is your wheelhouse of living in this every day, and I want to before we dive into that, I think you asked me a couple weeks ago a question that what the most dejected fan base was, and I said the ACC. I think I'm going to stick with that as I'm watching what's happening over there in that conference. They're really excited about basketball and hoping Duke and North Carolina bring it back. But let's dive into CFP ranking. What do you expect to see? How important is it that you're in it the first go around? Is there an importance to being in that first ranking? Do you think what as a team that's kind of on that 10, 11, 12, if I'm in there now, does that help me?
Yeah, I think November 4th is not the one that really matters all that much, because there is an element of jockeying for positioning if you are in the SEC or the Big Ten. It does matter where you are in that pecking order, but the reality of it is we still got a quarter of the football season to play, and you can get your marquee wins. And the playoff committee is really interesting in that they do give a big tip of the cap to teams that are just unbeaten. And you should, because winning is not easy. Winning is really hard.
It's hard.
And for teams to be 8-0 at this point in the season, or 9-0 in Indiana's case, like that should not be something that is overlooked. I would not be surprised. I think Ohio State is the best team in the country. I would not be surprised if Indiana is number 1 when they come out, because they have the best win of anybody. And that's the other thing, is that the playoff committee has shown that they will reward you if you have the best wins. What will be interesting is how they kind of seed the teams that are the one-loss teams. And that's where it does matter if you're not the number 1 team in the SEC or the Big Ten. One thing that'll be really interesting, though, is how they seed those teams that are the one-loss teams, because with those teams, it is you start going down, all right, what quality wins do they have? But then a conversation that I just despise is the quality losses. And for a team like Oregon, you are looking at their schedule. It doesn't have that marquee win. Right now, the best win is probably Northwestern, which I don't think anybody saw that one coming at the beginning of the year. But the win over Penn State, that one at the time was a massive win for Oregon. The wheels have fallen off in State College. And so that win doesn't look as good anymore. So where does a team like Oregon, which will be the 3rd highest ranked team in the Big Ten, or from the Big Ten, behind Ohio State and Indiana, who are both undefeated, how does the committee slide them in? Will they, as a one-loss team, if Oregon wins out, they will be in. But they do have quality win opportunities against Iowa this week, USC in 2 weeks, and then Washington on Thanksgiving weekend. That's where you look at it and you go, all right, if you are the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th team in the Big Ten or the SEC, it does matter where you are in the first rankings. But the reality of it is, if you win out, it's going to take care of itself.
Okay, so I'm looking at these rankings here, right? So we've got Cincinnati's 25th, and this is the AP poll, right? So they're ranked 25th, and they've got 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's only one other team. There's only one team in the top 25 right now that has 3 losses. That's Tennessee. So they've probably played themselves out of that with 3 losses, correct?
Yes, no doubt.
Every other team that is in that top 25 right now has 2 losses, like a Utah team that is 7-2, ranked 17th in the country. You look at Texas and Notre Dame, who both had 2 losses and are now sitting right on that bubble of being able to get in. Do teams like that, if they win out, do they have a chance to get in, or is that just a pipe dream for those schools?
Well, yeah, it just depends on what your schedule is. And that's where it's like, if you win out, you're going to give yourself a chance and an opportunity to have a seat at the table, because if Texas wins out, they're going to have wins over Georgia and Texas A&M, which those two teams are going to be highly ranked because you have Texas A&M, which is undefeated in the SEC, and then Georgia, which is a one-loss team. And so you can play spoiler for Georgia to where if you both have 2 losses at the end of the year, you are going to get the nod over them because you beat them head to head. And so, yeah, those teams do have that shot as 2-loss teams, but the fact that there are so many 1-loss teams and not very many undefeated teams, and I don't think we expect to see, all of the undefeateds to stay that way, because currently you have Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and BYU, who are all undefeated. If those, and I don't know if we're going to see all of them end up undefeated. History will tell us that Ohio State might lose to Michigan at the end of the year when nobody expects them to lose to Michigan at the end of the year.
I'm not a betting man, but I would bet on Ohio State this year. I haven't watched them play.
Both Ohio State and
Holy
Indiana
they're good.
They're playing at a different level.
They're very good
right now. And Texas A&M has had some tight games, but you know what? They're taking care of their business, and they've got some tough games to finish up the year. And BYU has flirted with disaster several times, but they've stayed undefeated. Here's where it gets tricky, though, is that we just named teams from 3 conferences. The ACC has a guaranteed seat at the table right now.
Yep.
And that conference, as you said, is a dejected conference. Right now, Virginia is the highest ranked team, according to the AP and the coaches poll, at 12 in the AP and 11 in the coaches poll. Louisville is a 1-loss team. They're at 14th. Then you go down to Georgia Tech as a 1-loss team. And then Miami is a 2-loss team. I'm sorry, Miami has played themselves out of it.
I would think so. Other than the brand, if they're able to get in, it's all just because of the brand, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, there's a world where the ACC and the Group of 5 are outside of the top 12. That world exists where they are not in the 12 best teams in college football, and they say, sorry, the SEC, the Big 10, and the Big 12 are all better than anything the SEC is bringing to the table, and I can see that happening. But what that does,
the ACC is bringing to the table.
yes.
Yeah.
But what that does, and you include Notre Dame into that as a 2-loss team, that bumps everybody, because a 2-loss Notre Dame is going to get in. Like we know that, whether that's right or wrong, they will get in.
I know Jason Cardona is not going to like me saying that, but that's wrong. But they're going to get in.
But this is where you go, all right, so now you have an ACC and a Group of 5 team that are going to be plucking one of those spots for a 1 or 2-loss team. That's where it gets hairy, and that's where having a preferred seat at the table in the first poll helps you down the stretch.
And you get to see these teams up close and personal, right? Like, obviously you don't see every team, but you get to see a lot of football. And is it my imagination over the last, for I don't know, 20 or so years, there were 4 or 5 teams that you thought could win the national championship, right? It seems to me with the NIL, one of the either intended or unintended consequences in a positive way, there's way more good teams that could win on any given Saturday across the country now because of the talent being not quite as deep in all of these schools, right? Am I misjudging that, or is that something that you believe to be true?
No, you're 100% right, because before the transfer portal and before NIL, it was Alabama had guys literally on their 3rd string that would start on other college football playoff teams when it was a 4-team playoff. Right? Like that was real. Georgia and Alabama just hoarded talent. And that was great for Georgia and Alabama, but everybody else just kind of looked at it and was like, all right, well, it's the Georgia and Alabama Invitational. Right now, you look at it from a coaching and a talent perspective. Ohio State is mopping the floor with teams. Indiana is mopping the floor with teams. And they do look a cut above kind of everyone else, but it's really dang hard to go undefeated. And that, to me, is going to be the thing is like, last year, Oregon was 13-0, had a win over Ohio State, won the Big Ten championship. Like they had every turn answered the bell and looked the part of a team that could win a title. They played an Ohio State team that got right and got hot. And I think we can't discount that for even the elite teams because of what you said, in that the talent has been distributed across those upper echelon teams. It's no different than it used to be in that there are always haves and have-nots.
Yeah.
But the haves now have more of an equal footing against each other. And that to me is, I don't care if you're undefeated through the regular season, you're going to have 3 incredibly tough tests at the end of the year as you go through the college football playoff, and you have to play a conference championship game.
Yeah.
Like you're telling me that Ohio State and Indiana could go perfect this year because they don't play each other in the regular season. They could meet each other in the Big Ten championship game. And then, oh, by the way,
Play again.
You have to play a team that won a playoff game while you've been sitting for a month, and they're going to get hot and get right. And that is scary to think about.
I think different than professional sports, college football is a very unique animal. We talked about baseball earlier today and it being good for dynasties in the NBA, in the NFL, in Major League Baseball. I think there is that component to that fans love that dynasty. But I think in college football, because those fan bases are all so unique to their region, to their city, to their town, to their state, that having that talent spread out makes it far more interesting.
Yeah.
And I think people got worn out of the Alabama, Georgia being going to win the national championship every year, and has really created a level of excitement on these campuses that didn't exist before, and has been really good for sport. And it's one of the things that the NIL had and the transfer portal has been great for college football.
Well, and I think, look, there were the doomsday people that NIL is going to ruin college athletics. And look, it hasn't been perfect and it hasn't been right. No. But one thing that you can draw a direct correlation to is that the teams that when NIL started, the universities where when NIL started, they got their ducks in a row the right way. And that is not funding your NIL for a year to year, but for something that is sustainable.
Yeah.
Those are the universities that are winning and continuing to win. There's a lot of schools that have a lot of money. Florida State, Texas is one of these ones too, where everybody's like, oh, Texas is just going to run away with it. They're a fertile recruiting ground, rich history tradition, a multitude of billionaires. Well, those schools didn't get their NIL done the right way. They were going year to year at the beginning of this thing. And that gave the other schools an upper hand. Indiana's a great example of this. Like, people don't realize that Indiana has one of the largest alumni bases in the entire country. There's a lot of money at Indiana. Mark Cuban went to Indiana, and now he's starting to give money to Indiana athletics. The schools that went about it the right way, and Ohio State is a prime example of this. Right when NIL started, Gene Smith was the AD at the time. He just said, we're not going to do this year-to-year crap. We know we have money. We're going to make sure we have money every single year.
Yeah.
And you're seeing they're running away right now, and they have an absolute juggernaut on their hands. A&M, same thing. Like, they got their NIL right out of the gate. And you look at the top teams in college football right now, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Oregon are your top 6. Those are all schools. And then you look at a school at 9th in Texas Tech. Texas Tech had a billionaire say, no, like, we're not playing around anymore. We're going to do this the right way. We are going to load up. We're going to fund all of our programs. And it's not just football. It's all their sports they're thriving in.
Yeah, back to the business of sport. I think there's something here to talk about. All right, let's. No matter what happens, it's going to be fun to watch, fun to talk about here over the next. There's tons of storylines. It makes the conference weekends now, the Saturdays, super fun to watch and give fans something to look forward to going forward.
And a 12-team playoff, the whole ridiculousness of it'll make the regular season not as important. Yeah, tell that to every single fan base that has fired their head coach in the middle of the season, and every team that's sitting there with one loss, white knuckling it to the end of the year.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Gonna be fun to watch. All right, let's dive into some NFL and just a couple of stories to touch on here. One of them, this Mahomes Allen rivalry that has really become probably the biggest rivalry in the NFL since what, Brady Manning?
Brady Manning, yeah.
I think it is, and it's sort of, they played what, 10 times now here in the last is it
7 years?
7 years. I think it's great for the sport, and we're Bills fans at my house. My son's a huge Josh Allen fan, so we watch all these games. But what is, as you're watching this, do you think both? I know you didn't watch that game all the way through, but as you watched both of those teams, do you think they got a chance to play on the biggest stage again in the AFC title game at the end of this year?
Yeah, I mean, the NFL this year it's been thrown on its head yet again, because the Chiefs look human at times. The Bills, nobody's ever going to trust, well, since the 90s, that they're going to get over the hump. But like, you have so many teams, and the ebbs and flows of the NFL is what makes it king. And also, these rivalries make the NFL king, because, I mean, how many of these quarterback matchups have we had that over the history of the NFL, they've hyped up quarterback versus quarterback, even though they never face each other on the field? There's so many outliers, but it's the most important position in all of sports.
Yeah.
And Allen and Mahomes is so similar to Brady and Manning, because Manning was able to beat Tom Brady in the regular season, but in the postseason, it was never going to happen. You just knew it was never going to happen. Josh Allen in 10 matchups is 5-5 against Patrick Mahomes, but he's 0-4 when it means the most in the playoffs. And that comes down to, the playoff game where in 47 seconds,
Yep.
Mahomes leads down a scoring drive to knock off the Bills. And it was like,
Heartache.
I don't know if they're ever going to make it, And Josh Allen got another one this past weekend. Yeah. And that adds another layer to the drama of, look, Josh Allen being 5-1 against Patrick Mahomes in the regular season, that's incredible. I don't care who you are, but he's 0-4 in the playoffs, and we're going to see it again. Like, I feel it that we're going to see it again.
The NFL really wants us to see it again.
And I hope we do. But I hope this time it's in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I hope that it is in Buffalo, because Arrowhead is such an advantage in the playoffs. It really is. Their crowd, the surface, the elements, it all plays a role. And I want to see it in Buffalo, where it gets flipped. And sorry, going to Buffalo in January, that sucks, man.
Yeah.
And I would love to see them finally get that game where the playing field is level. It's going to be frigid and cold. And I know we've seen it before, and Mahomes still won that one when, Jason Kelsey's jumping out of the suite with Taylor Swift and handing kids up, and he's shirtless, and he's got the full Buffalo experience going on. I love Jason Kelsey.
Oh, so do I.
I think he is fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I need more of him with everything.
Just people who take themselves so seriously around sport, right? And he does not take it too seriously. This is a game. Obviously, there's lots of money involved, and it's a business, and these guys' livelihoods are on the line, coaches and families and stuff. But it is still at its core a game, and he never forgot that.
No. But I want to see another playoff matchup in Buffalo, so we can get Josh Allen hopefully over the hump, because I think that's also good for football too. Is if you get over that hump finally, then you get your flowers as being the elite quarterback, because fans are so nitpicky and talking heads are so nitpicky, and well, you can beat him in the regular season, but he can't just beat him in the playoffs. Well, yeah, maybe Kansas City's defense figures some stuff out in the playoffs too, which we've seen every single year, and they look like a completely different team.
Well, and maybe Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes combination is maybe the best combination of head coach, play caller, quarterback that's ever been on the planet.
It's pretty special.
Yeah. Speaking of that combination, let's talk about Sean Payton and Bo Nix. And I am I'm fascinated by this. This is the kind of stuff as a former coach and being around the game of basketball my whole life, and just watching coaches and players and interaction and who's good when. How in the world can a guy like Bo Nix and Sean Payton as a combination look as bad as they look sometimes, and then have the ability to just turn it on at a moment that matters. And one quarter you score 33 points and come back and win the football game. Yesterday it's not 33 points, but it's the same deal. Kind of inept offensively, and all of a sudden everything just clicks.
Mhm.
Like it's one of those phenomenons that happen. Michael Jordan sometimes had some of this, right? Where he would be kind of pedestrian until the last 6 minutes or let others do their thing. But when it mattered,
yeah,
it's my time, right? Like you've seen people like this over the course of sports, but having a coach and a quarterback just look like they're completely off of the same page with each other, not be able to make completion, turn into that. What happens?
I go back to, I know a lot of coaches have said this, but the one that sticks with me is Phil Fulmer in 2004 when he was coach at Tennessee. He had Brett Schaefer and Eric Ainge, who were both true freshman quarterbacks. And he said, they're like, you've never started Peyton Manning didn't start as a true freshman.
Right.
T. Martin didn't start as a true freshman. And Phil Fulmer's response to that was, I don't know what it is, but these kids have it. And we're gonna let it ride with these kids. They have that it factor. And that's the same thing that you see here. It's like Bo Nix, whatever it is, he has it. And you can figure, and the great ones do.
Yeah.
Like whether you want to call it the clutch gene, the it factor. But with Sean Payton, you also have one of the best in-game play callers in NFL history.
Yeah.
One of the best scripted play callers in NFL history. You look at starts to games and finishes to games. Sean Payton, he is 100% a rhythm play caller, and very few have the ability to adjust and adapt their game plan to fit whatever a scheme that the defense is throwing at you, and adjusting that as the defense is adjusting in real time. That's what you see in the fourth quarter, is that a quarterback and a play caller are on the same page. You have the same thing with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, who you mentioned earlier, and that fit with those two guys. But what it takes is you have to have your quarterback has got to be smart, and the recall has got to be there to where we're seeing this over like the last year and a half with Nix and Payton, but it took time to build up that rapport with each other to where Sean Payton can go to Bo Nix and say, hey, do you remember 2 years ago when week 6 we did this against the Raiders? And Bo can go, yes, I got that. Like, we saw during the draft process, that's what Sean Payton fell in love with Bo Nix about, was his preparation and the ability to recall and say, no, we can run something that we did. I remember we did this. I remember the progression. I remember what the defense was doing. Let's do that. And you see that with those two guys in the fourth quarter, whether it's them putting up 21 points or 11 like they did this past week, and saying, we know exactly what they're going to do, and being on the same page there. And look, Bo Nix is far from perfect, but I'll be damned, that dude has got that it factor. He's going to put a drive together.
Yeah, and I don't want to say, I don't want in any way, shape, or form want to say that it's a negative thing that I'm bringing up. I think it's a fascinating thing, and I think with the level of that defense over there, the rest of the NFL should be nervous about when they get it right the first 3 quarters, right? Like that just looks like a juggernaut waiting to happen, and it is just so much fun to kind of watch the progression of these young football players especially when they get a guy like Sean Payton, right? Like they win the lottery and get drafted to a place like that. It's pretty fun to watch them go through that progression.
Well, in having Vance Joseph in that defense, that is the difference between doing what they're doing and being 7-2 this year and being, 4-3 in years past, is that their defense is good enough to allow them to F around and find out.
Yeah.
Keeps you in a lot of games when your defense is that good. But in order for them to be a legitimate contender and for them to be a team that you can rely on, they've got to be better in the second and third quarters, especially.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to watch. Fascinating story of watching that whole class of quarterbacks, just kind of their progression and where they are in phases. It's going to be 5-6 years down the road, I think that whole group is on its way to being a pretty damn good group.
No doubt about it.
All right, man. Well, we're to the end here. You got your question of the question of the week for me here?
I do.
Okay.
I do. You are a basketball guy. What sport that you watch do you take the most out of as far as like the competitiveness, and really kind of schematically how you attack a game? Because I think everybody has those sports where it's like, I love this sport, but this one is number 2 because of the same kind of edge you can get.
Football.
Yeah.
I was as a coach, I got to work for, and then when I was a head coach, the opportunity to put game plans together. Football, having gotten to coach football at the 7th and 8th grade level for the last for 2 years, it gave me even more respect for what those guys do. Right. I was talking to former NFL quarterback the other day about this, of how much more admiration, respect, I don't know what the right word is, to be able to get offense, defense, special teams all to look like it's supposed to look by game day is a remarkable operation that you have to be. And I know what it felt like to try to get 5 people to be able to run and execute a play on a basketball court. So the whole preparation, the way that they used film, and I learned that really early on from some football guys, and being able to see weaknesses, see tendencies from defenses. And I think very similar to, on third down, how are you playing? Like, what's your coverage? What does that look like? In basketball, it's not on a down, but it's how are teams playing us in pick and roll, right? Am I seeing hedge? Am I seeing drop protection? Am I seeing trap? And being able to understand what they're doing, understand how important your player or how good your players are within each situation, and making sure you make the right call based on how your team is being defended. I think those are the crossovers and the correlations that I see between the two sports. And it was super fun for me to go coach football. And I've told my son this over and over again. If I had it to do over again as a young coach, if I was back at 22, I would have done everything I could to get on a football staff as the no paid GA assistant to the assistant video coordinator, to be able to be a part of that growing up. And I would have left basketball behind. I love the game still, but football has just kind of taken me over. And having a son that plays the quarterback position certainly has helped that. And my wife even played professional football for a year. So like we've transitioned from a basketball family to a football family. Your basketball teams played like a football team though too. We did. We got told over and over again that we looked like teams playing ice hockey without sticks. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. And I think that was one of the things over the years that wherever I worked, it never was at a place where it was just easy to recruit. You always there was always a limitation. Loved my players, loved them all. But we were never the most athletic, except for 2 years at Southern Oregon University of Utah. We were never the most athletic, and you had to figure out a way to win. Right. And I hear this term all the time. There's ugly wins, right? And there's no such thing as an ugly win. There's just wins. And you got to figure out how to use your players to the best of their abilities to be able to beat the team that you're playing that night. And I think that's the correlation between football and basketball. Wins are like babies. Somebody may think it's ugly, but it's your baby. You love it. That win is always beautiful. There is no pictures on the win-loss column. There's just a W and an L. And that W is beautiful, and that L is ugly. There is never one time that I thought, that was a pretty loss. Oh, that was an ugly win. Just a win, get the next one. Yeah. Find a way. Find a way, baby. Find a way. All right, Dusty. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm enjoying the hell out of this. If you're listening to this and you like what we're doing, let us know. And we'll do this again next week. I'm sure the world of sports just keeps giving us amazing things to talk about. I don't think it's going to slow down. No. And it likely won't be anything that will be expected. Like we talked about last week, the Blazers head coach was arrested by the FBI. So you never know. Expect the unexpected in sports. Something's going to happen. All right, Dusty. Thanks, man. Thank you.